And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Atoll, and I'm joined again by Electrek Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
And we've got another special guest with us this week. Thank you, Storm Saunders, for joining us. How you doing, Storm?
Doing really well. Thanks, guys, for having me.
Absolutely. We know it's pretty early out there in California, but we are excited to talk some Saunders news. In addition to some of the other e-bike news we're going to talk later in the podcast, we're going to start off with Saunders because the company has been in the news a lot lately. We just reported on the fact that they launched this new EV credit for their motorcycles, the Metacycle, which this isn't actually a like a federal tax credit like you think of for electric cars. This is something that Saunders created themselves, and they basically were able to offer $2,500 off of their $6,500 Saunders Metacycle electric motorcycle, which I've ridden, is an awesome ride. We'll talk about that next. But first, we're going to talk to Storm about this new credit and how they were able to sell 1,000 Metacycles in a week using this. So what was the impetus here, Storm? Why launch this amazing discount on these bikes all of a sudden?
Well, Micah, you know my beginnings, right? It was always a mission-based company from day one, since the crowdfunding. Remember that amazing price what we offered for e-bikes early on, and the wrath I took for it. I just think part of it is engineering. We're having a frame, low pressure casted frame, without all these, welds and lines along the waist. And, there's a lot of labor cost savings in that aspect. And also, as we have shipped right now, almost 2,000 units, right? This year, last quarter and early, this year, our volume is going up. So we're able to negotiate better pricing and so forth, so forth.
2,000 units you guys have shipped? Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's been white glove delivery. Now Metacycles in every state, every 50 states. Even yesterday, one landed in Hawaii last night, so that was good. Just prior to the show, so I got everything covered. So I can right now say, had a big thank you letter from the owner, how much we assisted, because I don't believe we technically shipped there right now. So, and also we went through all growing pain with all registrations, because this is a first product for Saunders, which is homologated and plated, and had to deal with bureaucracy in every state, since they never heard of Metacycle or Saunders, right? So it's a fascinating experience, but at the same time, as you said, when you rode it, it's a natural progression of electric bikes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I know that you guys had been planning an IPO. Now it seems like that might be postponed. Is this helpful to be able to sell so many motorcycles quickly and help raise some additional funds?
I look more at this as the space is still quite open to a lot of competition. And my idea always to be able to sell at scale, which has always been our part of our business plan, is just to grab a larger market share. Just take as much as you can right now, because once you get people as owners of the Metacycle, they're not going away. And there's new Metacycles coming out. In near future, the line is expanding. So that's always my approach, because otherwise we're spending $2,000 on marketing, on Facebook ads, to sell it. So
yeah, so that's really interesting that you're using the opportunity to get bikes out there as a marketing tool, and that's really cool. I didn't think of that, and that's awesome. But you mentioned there's going to be more Metacycles. You mean more models? And if you could, maybe you can give us a kind of like a hint of what we can expect there.
Well, these guys, we're developing a couple mid-drive models, but they're higher price point. So I'll certainly, once we unveil them or start to drop them down the road. But Metacycle is still the most this is going to be like a most friendly user case where like pretty much like Micah, like you said, right? You hop on it, you know, maybe 10 seconds later, 15 seconds later, you know, I got it, right? So this is one of the kind experience, right? And other ones are going to be more like directed to a specific audience.
Right, absolutely. So one of the things that I feel like has been sort of a hallmark of the Metacycle is that it's been largely pitched towards newer riders, maybe not someone who's already been riding for a while or has 2 or 3 bikes in their garage, but someone who perhaps even came from electric bicycles and wanted to upgrade a bit. So when you've got these new riders, new customers, how do you ensure that you're sort of providing not just the consumer education, but also the service that these newer riders that might not understand motorcycles as well and might need more, hand holding from a company, especially when you guys, doing both electric bicycles and motorcycles at the same time. How do you deal with all that customer service?
So I looked at the data last night. So I think 90% right now for Metacycle, any kind of tech supports, we're able to solve via Zoom or FaceTime, right? So it's just a troubleshooting, customer didn't push this button or did that. So 10% we fly out to your, sometimes fly, depends where our technicians are based, but we go to your house because that's always been my experience that, look, if I have a transportation, I hate taking my cars to dealer and dropping off, getting rental. We're just doing the same business model what Tesla does. We service majority of cases on your property, driveway, garage, wherever you allow us to do it. And, worst case scenario, we'll take it back and get you a new one.
Right. Okay. And I mean, that must be fairly labor intensive if, on those few times that you do have to send, a team member out there. Do you have the staff to be able to handle those sort of personal visits?
Right now, yes. As we scale, we will, of course, we're going to have to scale tech support as well. It's always fine line. The best thing is that you get off the production line, perfect product, right? So you don't need to hear about it for next couple of years or from the owners, right? So that's always been a priority. Manufacturing is kind of my real passion. So we're not having, I think, 1,500 or 2,000 Metacycles what we ship right now. There's been maybe 6 cases right now where we had to go actually to your house and see it.
Oh, okay. So it's a very small number then
Very
of
small.
actual.
Right now, very small. That's the beauty of these this space, right? It's just if you get it right, I mean, it's pretty simple, right? And if you start complicating and creating things where then the direct to business, direct to customer model doesn't work, right? But as long as you do the designs in-house, engineering in-house, and all your tech people are brought along the development process, right? So now they already understand, they know there's a lot of questions being asked during the development process. So I think this is like as we progress direct to consumer, the companies which really get build from ground up like SONDORS does, and involve tech people, customer service people from early development stages. That's the future where entire business knows what's going on once the product is launched.
Yeah, and Storm, you mentioned Tesla earlier, and I see so many kind of parallels between SONDORS and Tesla, especially early Tesla. I wonder though how, like, obviously supply chain issues slow things down. You can't always make the dates that you said you could make. Tesla's been in the same boat, but Tesla, they finally delivered their products. You've always delivered your products, maybe a little late, but always delivered, always impressive products. Everybody loves the things they get. So like, how do you assure people, especially in this climate, the Silicon Valley Bank is going under today and all kinds of weird stuff is happening. Supply chain, I think you mentioned prior to the show that there's a lot of supply chain stuff going on in China where everybody's making really cheap e-bikes. How do you convince your customers that you're going to be around for the long haul? You're going to be around for the delivery of your vehicles. You know, what's the thing that they need to know?
Well, we've been around for 8 years, so we have some history. Like
Which is forever in the e-bike industry.
Yeah, it's kind of long time.
Yep.
I mean, world is getting interesting. It's a interesting place to be in. What I mean, our space, we were planning to do the IPO, but the environment is just so bad right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's been 30. I was told by our bankers this has been like a worst environment in past 30 years, right? When it comes to IPOs. They were already impressed that we got as far as we did. So that's shelved for a while. The way you do it, the way we stay around is that we just try not to overextend ourselves. You know what I mean? So keep the small crew. Do not overextend. And when you do, make sure that you make the adjustments. And also, to be honest, I mean, I do a lot of things myself on daily basis when it comes to being involved on designs and engineering and production. So I always have a pulse on a company. So knowing all the details intimately. So the answer to it is we have still an epic product and people are still buying. So as long as that takes place, I think the biggest mistake we could do is we put out a product which is just a dud. But I haven't done it recently yet, at least.
No, everybody's really excited about the Metacycle.
Yeah.
I don't think we've seen anything quite like it in that space. Clearly, it's design is way ahead of everybody else, and price point obviously is amazing. So like, how do you ramp up sales? Like, talk to me about scaling. Are you getting more factories involved? Are you getting more parts? What's
Scaling is like, I believe our production right now is around 60 units a day. So in scaling right now, we're scaled. Our scale matches our sales, right? So it's well proportioned. So and as far as like additional factories and everything, now it's more efficiencies. I always look about how can we redesign something and make something efficient in the same space and with the same headcount, right? So and also it's interesting when you guys mentioned how futuristic it is. I will never forget that when I was at Malibu Kitchen, it's like 2 years ago, just launched the first original Metacycle, and I was standing next to Jay Leno, and somebody was riding in a Metacycle, and he turned to me and he said, "I see the future," and I was like, "Wow, did you really say that?" Because this guy is respected in a automotive space and motors, but it's ICE engines, right? So it's like I was just really impressed about it. So it's always stuck with me. So like when people make, because there's a lot of always negativity when I need to listen, but when somebody says something really like recognizes, you're like, okay, cool, I'm not the only one, right? Because early on, when you create a product like a Metacycle, oh my God, I had to guys listen to 4 prominent factories to tell me that this cannot be built, right? Speaking of like when you say, are you how are you staying in business or what's the future? I need to hear every day that something what I want to do can be done, right? And this is when we're already we were doing a pre-sales on Metacycle, right? And it's like, this frame can be done. That's impossible. Can be done. You know what I mean? So, and I think really, Seth and Mike, also really in this space, what's going to be next also for SONDORS is that we need to continue to make things which people believe can be done, price-wise, design-wise, engineering-wise, to keep it relevant.
Yeah, so we can kind of pivot at this point to your bikes, which kind of you changed the world kind of with the $500 fat tire bike. I think maybe you could even say like kind of created the e-bike revolution. I know a lot of people that would never consider an e-bike saw that thing, saw what it could do, and whether they chose that or maybe something else, kind of blew up the space. So talk to us about e-bikes. Like, we love the Mad Mods.
Yeah.
What else is happening in that space?
Yeah, so I'm going to be launching a whole new meta line for e-bikes probably in next 2 months. So we're going to revamp our entire e-bike catalog.
Wow.
So yeah, because time has come, as you guys know, it's like, anytime I go to trade shows, you know what I mean? Like you see our fold frame, it's probably one of the most copied frames out there, so
For sure.
and it's like that, and I never care about it. It's like it just sometimes throws me off. I'm in a car and I'm seeing somebody go by, it's like, that's Sondors. No, that's very close to it, but not it. So it's constantly, you have to watch that. But we're gonna introduce all new models, and frankly, the ones which we have currently going to become instant classics, because what I just want to go again, like I could kind of take our own road when it comes to innovation and forward-looking product line and e-bikes, because everything is starting to look the same, so we need to start to differentiate and go back to, like Seth said, we started early on and everybody copied. So I trust that we can do that again.
Absolutely. So, it amazes me how many different directions you guys are working in, though that seems to be a hallmark of Sondors in general. You bring out this new meta line of e-bikes, you're scaling up production and deliveries, it sounds like, of the Metacycle. I know you mentioned that, you've streamlined the team a little bit, trying not to overextend yourselves. How do you balance all of these things with a smaller team and even more development and even more products?
It's how I balance that a lot of times what I think are like good ideas or direction we should go, I let it a little bit simmer, and instead of pursuing a lot of wrong directions, we put all our focus in the right direction. So because you know what I mean, like I learned this with like a hard way, where you try to optimize sometimes a lot of things which we should not even go there in the first place, right? So, and that's where companies drain themselves, because they kind of don't know what their DNA is. So they're looking left, they're looking right, they're looking here, they're looking there. And I try to kind of tune out all that noise, what's going on in this space, and what people are chasing. And I'm just constantly bringing back to, like, what would be my experience? How would I feel? Because I've been riding a bicycle since I was a kid. I always rode. I was just talking to my girlfriend the other day how, in Chicago, I used to ride bike to work, right? And my face was red because sometimes it was hot, sometimes it was cold. So you never know, right? So, and it's just not following the noise and being really concentrated. And once you define what you really want to pursue, you go all in, right? And everybody knows what they're supposed to do within a team. And that's how we try to avoid being overextended in these crazy directions. It looks maybe like a lot of different directions, but it's pretty focused overall. You know what I mean? Like a narrative of the entire story.
Right. Certainly. Well, I mean, it sounds very exciting. That new line of e-bikes, I'm definitely on the edge of my seat waiting to see. So I hope you guys can stick to that 2-month estimate, because I'm excited to see what you guys are working on there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would, if you guys want to talk about it, we'll certainly do it once we go live.
Absolutely. We'll have to have you back. Is there anything else that I didn't hit on, Seth, that you had any other questions?
Just curious about that three-wheeled car that came and kind of went. That was such a cool product. I wonder what happened.
You know what? And I was just thinking about it yesterday as well. It's like, I really love that product, but the three-wheel space. So it was tough to get capital for a three-wheel space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can thank a couple companies for it, like Electromechanic, the
Aptera.
three-wheeler, and then what's that, Moto, and then it's just there's such a stigma to a
Right.
three-wheel space, so that so you would need like such a huge dollar amount to convert people into, that know that's not the case, right?
Right.
But so as I thought that it would evolve and would become less stigmatized, I believe right now it's even more, right? So, and then what you do is if you do release and you put the funds in it, and people are excited with deposit stage, but then suddenly when it's time to actually make the purchase, there's a million reasons, and one of them it's missing one wheel, right? Then you're really that becomes an uphill battle. But do I love that vehicle? I absolutely do. I think it would have been a phenomenal.
Yeah. And you guys did an amazing job with it. I mean,
Yeah.
I know like certain angles, it kind of looked like a regular vehicle inside and out. It was gorgeous. Um, so, maybe you put it on the shelf and come back a little bit later and revisit.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. That would be really amazing.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Storm. This has been awesome. We're so excited for not just your current products, but the hints that you gave on future bikes, the new Metacycles with mid drives, and a new lineup of Meta bikes, e-bikes. So love the name. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Micah.
Till next time.
Talk soon. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Take care. Well, there you have it, straight from the horse's mouth. So we'll have to follow up on some of those things. We also got some new information there. So, we'll certainly follow up there. But we have many more e-bike related stories to get to this week, including a new electric bike from RadRunner. This is or from Rad Power Bikes, rather. This is the RadRunner 3 Plus that was, that was just unveiled about a week and a half ago, with an up to 100-mile range. Now that's with a second battery that they're going to be adding as an option. So, out of the box, it's going to have more like a 50-mile range on pedal assist. But this is the newest high-end RadRunner. It's part of that Plus line. So that means it comes with things that the base model RadRunner 2 doesn't. Things like the hydraulic brakes, the 7-speed shifter, the suspension, a different colorway, whether that interests you or not. Personally, I kind of like that olive drab on the original RadRunner, but some people like the silver gray. So, that could be an upgrade for some. I know the original RadRunner Plus had that like espresso colored seat and passenger package. I'm not sure if this one does. I don't know if you saw anything about that, Seth. I didn't see any other fancy seat colors here.
No, in fact, when I first saw this thing, it reminded me of a RadRunner clone because we've seen so many of those. So I was like, oh wait, this is actually from Rad. So yeah, a little bit different with the in frame battery and a lot of options. But the one thing that I think we were all taken aback by was the price.
Absolutely, yeah. So Rad launched this thing at $2,500, which would have made it the most expensive Rad bike ever if it hadn't been beat by tied by the equally priced Rad trike about a month and a half ago. So, I mean, that one, it knocked the air out of my lungs when I saw the price, because Rad has always been, sort of 1,500 was like the price for the longest time at Rad. And they even launched the original RadRunner at, I believe, $1,299, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and I actually got one with some kind of discount for my father-in-law for $1,000, like $999 on some. There was like some sale or something. So we're talking 2.5 times that price, which is a lot. Like, kind of pushes this out of a different category into a different category, I would say.
Absolutely. And there are a bunch of advancements on this bike. It's got the new semi-integrated battery. It's got upgraded brakes, the new dual displays, and it has a lot of functionality. But even so, I don't know if, I think I would go as far to say is I'm not sure 2,500 is even, a good deal here anymore. Now, you are getting a lot from Rad. They're the largest company. They're known for, if you need support, they're there. They've got not only the largest customer support team, but I think their customer support team is larger than the entire employee base of the next largest e-bike company in the US. So like, they're there when you have an issue, and they even, sent out a mass email a few weeks ago talking about working on further improving that customer service team. So there's other things to consider besides just the hardware we're looking at. And I know sometimes I'm guilty of just saying like, all right, what's the battery? What's the motor? All right, what's the price? And you got to kind of look at the whole picture. But even in this case, and I love Rad, but even in this case, when I look at the whole picture, $2,500 feels a bit rich for my blood. And I think I'm not the only one feeling that way.
Yeah, and they're already starting to. I think almost immediately they added a passenger seat package with the pegs and the seat and handlebars for free. So that's, I think they're probably getting that vibe from like the customer reaction. They're like, okay, maybe we went a little too far on this one. I imagine it'll come down in price either through sales or like hey, we did something wrong, I guess. Situation. I do love the update. Like, if this was a $1,500 bike, I would recommend it to everybody I knew. And it's especially weird in that they're seeing some competition from companies like there's a bunch of cheap no-name brands that are putting out stuff like this for the $1,500 price, but we're seeing stuff from Electrek, which is way less expensive, similar specs, and like I get that Rad doesn't want to race to the bottom in terms of margins and price and stuff, and they don't want to play in that area, but man, it just doesn't it doesn't seem like a Rad deal of a bike anymore. You know, with companies like Trek putting out cargo bikes now, and it seems like they're trying to play in that game, but I don't think they have the components to kind of join Trek. I don't know. It just seems like they're in a weird space right now, and it doesn't necessarily make financial sense at the moment.
Yeah, well, it definitely seems like they're trying to compete in sort of a new level here. And it's interesting what you said that, it's true. They might be sort of anchoring the price at 2,500. That way, when they do offer promotions or offer sales, it, feels like an even bigger discount when they knock $500 off down the road kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it is a bit strange to me. Now, I will say that one of the other advantages of Rad here is that they just have so many accessories. And in this case, I mean, the RadRunner 3 Plus is basically designed to have so many interesting accessories, from front and rear racks to the new locking center console, where it's not just like the flip top console before, but now you can actually lock it. Hard side pannier cases, so not even just bags, but like lockable hard storage.
We got some updated news here. Breaking news. They already lowered the price to $22.99.
Oh, wow. Okay. So was it the last few seconds or last few hours? Are they listening to us?
I think since the beginning of the podcast. So I'm sure it was earlier. Somebody in the comments mentioned it. Trucy.
Wow.
So it's already lower, and they have a built-in seat kit as well. So they're on their way to making a more equitable bike.
Well, man, we should have been harder on them. We could have had this thing down to $19.99 by now.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
So yeah, it's going in the right direction for sure. I mean, there's the RadRunner line has always been a favorite of mine, and you got to give Rad credit for basically like bringing this segment of utility bikes to the forefront. Not that they invented a short wheelbase cargo bike, but they really popularized it. So you got to give credit where credit's due. And this new price certainly is moving in the right direction. But I would love to see this at like, $19.99, $20.99, that sort of thing. I feel is like where you're getting more bang for your buck.
Yeah, the original, or sorry, the 2 Plus is at $199. Was that where it was before, or did they drop that one too?
I mean, originally it was at like $15.99 when it debuted, or $16.99. So I think for a while it's been up there at about $19.99. I don't think this is a reduced price after the new one came, which is surprising.
Right. So they already dropped it $200. RadRunner 2 says $14.99 here, but the Plus is $199. Okay. All right. Well, that's a little bit better. I mean, it spreads the price points around a little bit better. So I guess they're moving in the right direction, I want to say. And obviously this is a great bike. It's fun for tons of people, and it's inspired lots of copies. Speaking of, Specialized launched its most affordable electric bike yet, the 28-mile-per-hour Globe Haul ST utility bike.
Does this look familiar at all? So
little
this
bit.
is kind of a RadRunner style bike. I know when Specialized first announced that they were going to launch this sort of lower priced value e-bike segment under the Globe line, we sort of joked that they were channeling their inner RadRunner here. Specialized is, of course, a much higher end e-bike company or bicycle company that went into e-bikes. And the Globe Haul ST here is an interesting combination of sort of lower price parts. Like you see the hub motor there, which you don't normally find on a Specialized e-bike, but with higher end components and design. And so this comes in at $2,700, which is, close to what used to be the RadRunner 3 Plus's price. Now it's a good, $400 or $500 higher, but it's got some pretty comparable performance. It's a 700 watt motor, so pretty close in terms of power. It's designed as a utility bike, so front and rear racks, a whole ecosystem of accessories. It doesn't come standard with a throttle, but it is an upgrade option. But a lot of the components are actually nicer. So it's got a nicer 9-speed micro shift shifter. It's got those nice hydraulic brakes, though the RadRunner 3 Plus also has hydraulic brakes. It's got a telescoping seat post, so it's got a crazy range of riders from like 4'6" to 6'5" or something crazy like that. And then it's also, it comes from a higher end company, so the packaging is nicer. You even get a torque wrench as part of the toolkit, so that if you assemble it yourself, you're actually torquing the bolts to the right spec instead of the old that feels like about 10 Newton meters right there kind of thing, which kind of speaks to the type of company that Specialized is. It's not like slap it together and ride it around kind of company. Like they care about the torque of every bolt and that sort of thing. So to me, it's really neat to see Specialized get into this space where they're competing with some of the more value direct-to-consumer companies, but they're still bringing in the design and the quality of a company that's used to making $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 e-bikes. What do you think of this setup?
I love the look of it. It looks like a fun bike. It doesn't seem like you can have a rider on the back, or am I wrong on that?
So I believe there is a passenger package.
Okay.
I don't think we have a picture of it yet. The bike just launched, I think, yesterday or maybe it was Wednesday. So it just went up on the site, and I think most of the accessories we don't even have pictures of yet because there's a pretty wide range of accessories designed for it. So hopefully we'll get an idea of what it would look like with a passenger kit on back soon.
I mean, it's a little bit lower where the bar is. So even if there is a passenger kit, I guess they could have like a 6-inch raise on the passenger, but it looks like it would be like a little kid type of passenger, not like an adult passenger, which kind of the Rad is more tuned for. But I love it. Do we know if Globe bikes will be serviced at the same locations that service regular Specialized bikes?
Yeah, absolutely, they will. And you actually even have the option when you buy it of either having it sent to you or sent to a local Specialized dealer for them to assemble it, and then you'll pick it up from them.
That's a big plus. I mean, Rad is definitely getting out there with their spaces and their network of or their help desk people, but having actual bike shops all around the country is another big plus that Specialized can sport here. And I have to say, like, it's a different look. Like, your seat and your pedals and the geometry is pretty much the same, but it's a very unique look with that, the light on the front and the weird pannier thing there. I feel like this is enough of a design change that we probably shouldn't be calling it a RadRunner clone, even though same kind of customer, same kind of geometry and seating position and use case. So good for Specialized. I don't know. You think this will take off?
I think so. It's for all the people that really want the nicer bike store experience but don't want to spend $4,000. I see a customer for that, especially with those good parts, torque sensor, backed by Specialized. I think that's got an audience for sure.
Yep. And with Rad kind of jacking up their prices, it's very tempting. All right. Speaking of prices, Aventon Abound launched as a higher quality, low cost electric cargo bike.
So it's big cargo bike time the last few weeks, right? We've seen so many of these.
Cargo and trikes, they're everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anything that carries a lot of weight or, extra stable is kind of like a booming industry right now in e-bikes. And the Aventon, I guess it's technically Aventon. I've been saying it wrong for years, I think. It's hard to switch now. But the Aventon Abound is their new cargo bike. And there's a lot to like here. First of all, it's got that beautifully welded frame that Aventon is known for. Each of those welds, it's almost like they molded it out of clay instead of welding this thing up. Just the attention to detail in the fabrication is beautiful. From there, though, a lot of nice parts, great brakes, included nice rack and running boards. Those running boards, by the way, they're held on by 3 massive bolts. I think they're like 7 or 8 millimeters, which each one of those by itself could probably support a truck. I mean, it took a while for me to even like bolt those suckers on. The thing is so overbuilt. Also, there you're getting a look at their packaging, which is almost entirely plastic free, even down to using basically like paper pulp rope instead of cable ties. So, the company's doing some really cool things.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the bike, yeah, right. Like I love when I open a bike box and it's just not a ton of foam and plastic. Like all of this is 100% recyclable, which is really cool.
Bravo.
Outside of even just a very nice bike. But so back to the bike. Got too excited by the packaging. Torque sensor. They've got this really cool cargo like bag thing behind the pedals there. So it unzips and you've got sort of enclosed storage there, which is really nice. Large 720 watt hour battery, up to, I think it's 20 miles an hour on this one, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it goes to 28, which for cargo bikes, it's common to have that lower class 2 speed limit so that you don't get, out ahead of yourself with a big cargo load behind you. But all in all, just, for $2,200, a very nice, very well made, high build quality cargo bike that's competing with some of the lower price bikes out there. So, things like the Radwagon, the Electrek Expedition, the Blix Paca, I think is their cargo bike. So, there are a lot of direct to consumer cargo bikes now. And I think Aventon really did a nice job of going a bit above with the quality. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, and this is really cool, is the seat post is a dropper seat post. Not in the conventional button on the handlebar way, but there's a lever right under the under like the front of the saddle, so it looks like you're grabbing yourself, but you just like put your hand down there and grab the little handle, and the seat will go up and down, which for a cargo bike, when maybe you've got a bunch of cargo or you got kids back there, is great because you come to a stop and you just push that little lever and you drop down. You can put your feet on the ground nice and flat-footed, so you're stable and your kids or all your groceries don't go toppling off the back. So just a lot of attention to detail here.
Yeah, that's a cool little feature. I wonder how much extra that costs, if we'll be seeing that on more bikes, because I know when you have to wire it all the way to the handlebars, that's a lot of extra work and expense. But if it's actually on the bike seat, maybe it's a little bit easier to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's less to install. It's certainly a much more economical way to do it. So it was really cool to see that as an inclusion, and it adds to sort of the attention to detail and like the thought that went into designing this bike. That it's not just a collection of parts. It's like each piece really contributes something to the ridership and the ownership experience.
So about that 750 watt geared hub motor, is that kind of torquey, or is it speedy, or how does it feel?
So because it's limited to 20 miles an hour, it's hard to tell what the top end feels like. Some of these tend to sort of like peter out once you get into like 22, 23, but off the line, it definitely has good power. Now, Aventon has a bit of a more relaxed programming both to the throttle and pedal assist right off the line. So for that first second or two, the power delivery is really sort of gentle, I would say. It doesn't feel like anemic or anything, but you can feel that they take a couple seconds to let you ramp up the power, as opposed to some of the ad motor. I know when you push the throttle on those, like you just start like shooting dirt out the back of the bike.
Right.
So it's off the line for that first second or two. It's very gentle, but once the bike lets you go full power, it definitely has pickup.
That's great. And are these in stores now? I've actually seen Aventon in some bike shops. There's a bike shop near me that when a Pedigo opened, they started carrying Aventon bikes. So are these available now, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe these are already out. If not, they should be soon. This isn't like a long pre-order situation. But you're absolutely right. And that is an interesting thing because Aventon has actually worked quite hard at getting into bicycle shops and bike dealers around the country, as opposed to some of the other direct-to-consumer companies that are really focused on just online sales. Aventon has dozens and dozens, maybe more than 100 at this point, independent dealers and bike shops that carry their bikes. So it's something that you can actually go and sit on and try out, which is pretty rare in the industry so far.
Yep. All right. Moving on. This is kind of a sad story. Amid fire concern, New York City is banning sale of electric bikes without UL listed batteries, although UL listing is kind of important. So that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, this in general, this is certainly a good thing. And New York City is pretty early on here in terms of regulating this, in that they just passed a local ordinance that says within 6 months, you won't be able to sell in like a physical store in New York City any e-bike that isn't UL listed. And in fact, it's more than just the battery. The entire e-bike has to be UL listed. There's a specific battery UL certification that's a little more focused on the BMS, the cells, that sort of thing. But New York City went with a more inclusive whole system, so it covers the motor, the battery, the wiring, that sort of thing. And so in general, this is certainly a good thing because it's going to cut down on these sort of fly-by-night companies that have these ultra cheap e-bikes with ultra cheap batteries that have led to, in rare occasions, electric bike fires caused by these cheap batteries. Though I think it is important when we talk about e-bike fires to sort of consider the scope of the issue, in that, not trying to create a hysteria here. There are, hundreds of thousands of e-bikes, e-scooters, and e-mopeds in New York City, and we're talking about single digits to low double digit battery fires each year. So certainly a small percentage. And a lot of times it's actually not an issue with the bike itself, but when people buy aftermarket chargers or do battery modifications themselves. So there's some danger there as well. But it's certainly true that e-bike batteries are a largely unregulated market right now in the US. And so by adopting these UL listing standards to ensure that there's proper certification and testing of these batteries, as well as the entire e-bike, I have no doubt that this is certainly going to improve the safety in New York City. And I would not be at all surprised if this becomes a model for more cities, potentially state level, and even one day federal regulation over electric bikes.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say, like, it prevents you from buying at a store in New York City, but there's nothing preventing you from like going on AliExpress and buying a bike and having them send it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's only for like brick and mortar retailers where they can go in and find, a company that is selling these in their store. And also, I noticed in the comments that someone was asking for non-US folks, what is UL listing? It's a great question. I should have started with that. So UL is Underwriter Laboratories, and basically it's a safety certification that if you're in Europe, it's kind of like I think they're the EN numbers. Though I think in many places in Europe, you can use self-certification, whereas in the US, you cannot self-certify. So you can't just say, like, we did the tests, our thing is compliant. Underwriter Laboratories actually performs the tests. And that's sort of its own Pandora's box, because I know that there are different segments of UL that, like, I think UL in general is a nonprofit, but it has a for-profit component, and they make millions of dollars a year from charging high fees for these testings, which can be sort of a way to prevent smaller companies from getting into the market. So that's its own thing that one day we can get into. But in general, it's probably a good thing because it makes sure that all of these companies have the same safety certification at the same level.
All right. Last story. Electric bicycle giant Bafang expands into electric motorcycles with powerful new motors.
So if you're familiar with Bafang, then you probably know them from electric bicycles. And this is another one, by the way, I've been pronouncing wrong for years and I can't change. It's actually Bafang, and I get it right like 1 out of 10 times. But anyway, so Bafang, they make e-bike motors and controllers and batteries and basically all the components for electric bicycle drivetrains. But they just opened a sort of sister company called T&D that is going to make electric motorcycle components, both the batteries and the motors, and actually the controllers as well. So I think entire powertrains, which is exciting because, you know, the company has been producing e-bike stuff for like almost 20 years now. I mean, they've got a couple decades of experience, and they're basically like the Chinese equivalent of Bosch. Now, not as high quality, but you know, they're like the alternative that if you don't want to pay for a European powertrain, you pretty much go to Bafang because they've got some of the best stuff coming out of China. And so if they can take all of that experience, all that expertise, and especially their work with higher power electric bike motors, and they can apply that to electric motorcycles, that could usher in a new era of more affordable electric motorcycles for companies that are brave enough to say, all right, we're going to take some, you know, Chinese components. We're not going to rely on the Bosch motors and that sort of thing. Like, you know, my new scooter, NIU, has a Bosch hub motor. But if they had gone with the Bafang motorcycle level hub motor, which I don't think exists yet, that certainly could have saved some bucks there. So, you know, we're talking like 6-7 kilowatt level components here, not something that Harley Davidson's going to have to worry about, but certainly, you know, bikes like, you know, the SONDORS Metacycle, maybe something like that level of commuter motorcycle could potentially make use of these new Bafang or T&D rather electric motorcycle components, which to me is just super exciting for what it can do for pricing in the motorcycle industry. Could you see yourself riding one of these things, Seth?
Well, I was just thinking, like, Storm was saying that he's got some new mid drives coming.
There you go.
I didn't put the pieces together at the time, but like maybe, I mean, he's been using Bafang for a while, so it's maybe that's we're putting the pieces together. But yeah, I could certainly see SONDORS Metacycle type bikes using it. I love that space between bikes and motorcycles where you can go 35 miles per hour, not anything too crazy, and you can build a quality bike that, you know, kind of like a bike, kind of like a motorcycle, doesn't, you know, legally ambiguous, unfortunately, but fun to ride. And the biggest thing for me is, like, you know, bikes are safe, but when cars have to go around you, that creates problems. You know, the cars get frustrated, the bikers feel uncomfortable. When you can actually ride with traffic in a, you know, 35 mile per hour zone, that creates, you know, but cars aren't frustrated. You're just cruising along like a motorcycle. I feel like that space isn't. We don't have any legal framework for that yet, and it's something we need to work on. So, you know, maybe if Bafang, you know, can build bikes in that space, it'll be more, you know, more likely to get legitimized. So.
Absolutely. And, you know, just the more options, the better, because unlike electric bicycles, where there seem to be dozens of manufacturers, there just isn't that type of variety for manufacturers in the motorcycle space. So I'm excited to see what this can do for the space and what new options this opens for designers and engineers to build some cool new rides.
For sure. All right, let's head into the comments and see what kind of craziness we can find. So the IT consultant, we were talking about SONDORS. SONDORS is making an SONDORS ecosystem, and I think that's been true for a little while now, I guess, with the Metacycle. And like you can't deny that SONDORS kind of leads the industry, because after the Metacycle came out, you know, Super 73 and a bunch of other companies started announcing their, move from e-bikes to motorcycles. So good on them. Dick Flinghammer. I wonder if that's a real name. Question: will Sondors make the Cyber Guard for Tesla? Oh, Cyber Quad. I think they were trying to say there. I don't think so. I don't think Tesla's really outsourcing that, but certainly Sondors has some expertise there. I don't know. We'll see. I have a Mad Mod Scrambler for 13 months, and I want the rear cases and rack, but still not available apparently. Okay, I guess
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Sondors has a way of like promising a lot and delivering most of it, so that might have been one of the things that didn't get delivered.
That's true. Oh, and this is something I noticed as well. Sondors is really big at Costco. They've got like some prominent displays and lots of bikes selling through there. 350 watt step through, $15.99 at Costco. That sounds about right. And that's great that you can just, I could go get one right now instead of ordering and waiting quite a bit of time.
Yep.
Have you heard of
Tyson?
Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I was actually just riding it, so I will have a review of that one coming out shortly. I was just testing it. Yeah.
Nice. Any hints? Any spoilers?
It's definitely a step up for Hey Bike, which is known for like real low cost bikes. It's an interesting folding bike, and it's got a pretty cool new colorway. So be looking for that review coming.
All right, Storm Sondors seems like a cool dude. I agree. So Trucy was the one who told us that they lowered the price down to $299. Let's see, they lowered. Oh, called us losers. All right, and it's funny is like, hey losers, and then he's like, why'd you ban me on my other account? You guys are weird. I wonder.
Some answers, or some questions answer themselves.
They sent out mass email and admitted they priced it wrong yesterday or the day before. So we didn't get that mass email.
I just looked right now, and I am not on their RadRunner 3+ email list somehow.
I wonder if they gave discounts to the people who, they couldn't have sent them out that quickly. I wonder if they lowered the price on, people who bought one at $2,500.
Perhaps, yeah.
Huh. Well, that's news to us. All right. Found a gem on AliExpress, no suspension. Yep, you'll get a lot of that. And then we talked about UL listing, and Carl in San Diego came out with that. Flinghammer again. We took my buddy's beat up, highly abused 3-year-old Pedigo to the dealer in Boca Raton. I can't believe they fixed the brakes and other damage free. Good dealer. Yeah, Pedigos are great. They're, I would say, a little bit pricey for what you get initially, but then you've got the whole dealer network. That's kind of nice. And
the cool thing about their dealers too is they actually work on other brands' e-bikes. If you have an issue, like you could bring in, a Rad, for example, and get it serviced at a Pedigo dealer.
Not always, but usually.
Oh, not always? Okay. Maybe I've just been to really nice ones. I've actually been to the Boca one, for example, but all the ones I've seen, they're like really chill about working on other e-bikes.
The one near me was only Pedigo for a while, but once he got, better at bikes, he opened it up to everybody.
Got it. So yeah, it's true. They're franchised, so they're kind of, semi-independent in that way.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
All right. That's all for the comments.
Perfect. So thank you guys, everyone that tuned in for this special edition of the Wheelie Podcast. It was great having Storm here, and we're excited to have you guys back 2 weeks from now when we'll be back with a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. We'll see you next time, everyone.